All right, the Philadelphia 76ers. First move was bringing in Nick Nurse. I love that move. We'll talk about that more in a little bit. Free agents, James Harden, Paul Reed, restricted free agent, Jalen McDaniels, Shake Milton, and Bang Bang Niang. Expiring contracts of Tobias Harris, DeAnthony Melton for Cosmos, um, Daniel House. They have the $5 million tax exemption available to them. This is a very interesting offseason for the Philadelphia 76ers because they can totally remake their roster. Obviously, the move that everybody's waiting on is Harden. If I'm Philadelphia, honestly, if Harden's truly considering Houston, that means that he's not serious about winning a title. I mean, it's going to be hard for him to overcome his playoff struggles, for Embiid to overcome his health and playoff struggles, especially with the way that they lost that game 7. Someone that's not fully committed and bought in, especially at this point in his career, that has to be just a massive red flag to me. So if I'm them, I'm saying, hey, okay, go ahead and go. Let's try to at least salvage a trade exemption out of this. We'll send you a future pick or a second round pick. You send us some nominal player and let's get a trade exemption. And then let's use that exemption to get a player. The player that I have in mind is Bradley Beal. So Bradley Beal was someone that it was rumored by Bill Simmons that Joel Embiid had been recruiting him. And if not for a left hand injury, I believe he would have been on the team, if not James Harden. So if that is the case, let's go back to that. Well, the word on the street came out today is that the Wizards are trying to rebuild, which makes sense. Their GM came from the Clippers. One of the big moves from the Clippers that brought them to this era where they're a contender. I mean, they've had health issues, but they've been a contender for the title. It has been trading Blake Griffin and getting off of his books. And I think that Washington's going to do the same. I think they're going to do a complete teardown. So they might be amenable just trade Bradley Beal for an inception and maybe a pick. Now, Bradley Beal has a no trade clause, but again, in the theory that I'm working off of Bill Simmons, who's someone that's plugged in the NBA, he was already ready to go a few years ago. So I don't see any reason that he wouldn't be able to go there now. Another thing that they have to do is turn Tobias Harris contract into something. They've banged their head against the wall versus this Boston team, and the biggest problem that they have is just they don't have wings to guard them. Miami Heat showed that guys like Strus and Caleb Martin are eligible, can do it, can get the job done, but they don't even have someone of that caliber. Tobias Harris, he tries hard, he competes, but he just does not have the foot speed to keep up with Tatum and Brown. Maybe moving him to a place like Orlando. Markel Fultz interview recently where he said, hey, if the Sixers would have been patient with me, I think I could have helped them win. Maybe packaging Tobias Harris expiring contract for him and a Jonathan Isaac and take a chance on a guy like him who has been a defensive player of the year candidate, but has been run into injuries. His last injury that knocked him out was a hamstring injury, soft tissue, nothing major, nothing that should keep him out of training camp. So I would make a swing with that, and then bring Niang back, Paul Reed. You match whatever is on his books, and then look at the other players, expiring contract. Korkmaz as someone who's expressed some frustration being on the team. Maybe look to move on from him, and package him for another wing. Jalen McDaniels, maybe with a better coach, he might be a more intriguing player. I don't think Doc played him enough to really, get him ready for the type of action that a second round series in the playoffs entails. A guy like Nick Nurse, someone who I've always loved from afar. He's a guy, to me, the complete opposite of Doc. He makes a lot of adjustments. He's willing to try anything. Um, you know, I've heard something about him not playing young players, but Scotty Barnes blossomed under him. There's kids like Blanton, a lot of undrafted free agents. They're almost Miami Heat level with the way that their undrafted free agents have kind of turned out and become things in Toronto. So I think he's willing to give guys chances, and that's interesting. Another guy who is of that caliber who I think needs to get a chance is Springer, the young kid Springer. He showed some pop, and particularly that last game of the season. Now you have to always take that with a grain of salt, but I think he's an interesting player who needs to get some minutes in. I don't think Nick Nurse is going to come in with the preconceived notions like a Doc did. Doc gets bashed a lot. But I think that it was just time with him. And another thing in their offseason, how does Joel Embiid take this? This is the first offseason where he can truly look at himself and say, hey, in game 7, the most important game, I didn't show up. So what does that do to him? Does that light a fire under him to maybe get in better condition, come back in the best shape of his life, lose 20 pounds, work on his 3-point shot and stand in his range to really complete his offensive package? That's another interesting thing that I'm looking for. So go ahead and leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. Subscribe. And as always, the game is the game.